with everyone, we're going to record. If anyone doesn't want to be recorded, please let me know through the chat. But we're going to take the chance to record this seminar so we can also send it to other people or keep it in our records for learning. Good morning, everyone. I am really excited to be here with everyone today. We're going to have a very interesting morning in which we're going to talk about a lot of the learnings that we have gathered in the last couple of years through this project. My name is Lina Maria Saldarriaga, and I am the COO of Aulas en Paz, one of the partners in the development of this project, and also the director of this project. I am here with all the team that has worked for these 2 years hard, really hard, on how to become to make this dream that we have a reality. And today we're really happy to be able to show you some of the most important results and to be sharing with you a lot of the tools that we have developed through this project. As I said, we're going to have almost close to 2 hours in which first we're going to try to present you who we are, because we are aware that not all of you know who we are, and because we are based on the Global South, that doesn't always, we don't always get to see a lot of people from other parts of the world. So we're really excited to present you who we are, and then a little bit of the results, 3 main ideas of the results that we have in general, the project, what we learned from the project, the IA tools that we have talked about, that we develop, and then the clinical protocol that is also part of what we have been doing in this project. Then we're going to have the privilege to talk with some of our allies here, Maria Paula Ruge from International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and Alejandro Castañeda from Red Papás and Vigías, and hopefully we will be able to talk to Natalie Schupp also, who's from Safe Online. She's having a little bit of trouble with the connection, but hopefully she will join us to have a little bit of a conversation about the impact and the future of the type of research we're doing here in Latin America. And then we're going to talk about a little bit of conclusions and next steps, and we can fill you in some of the new developments that we are doing now that we're doing a second part of the project that we're going to present to you today. So everyone, welcome. We're really, really happy to have you. And let's start. So as I said, I'm Lina Saldarriaga. I'm the CEO of Aulas en Paz and also the director of the project. And I'm going to share this space with another PI, another principal investigator of this project, who is Pablo Arbeláez. Pablo is the head of the Center for Research and Information in Artificial Intelligence at Universidad de los Andes. We're going to talk a little bit about what Sinfonía, which is the center, does, and I'm going to talk to you about what Universidad de los Andes and Aulas en Paz, what we do and how it's related to the project. So next slide, please. The next slide. Paulo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lina. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you. I'm Pablo Arbeláez, and I lead the Center for AI at UNEANDES. Next slide, please. So let me tell you a little bit about our university. We're located in Bogotá. We are a small private university oriented towards research. We are proud to be consistently ranked among the top 10 schools in Latin America. And in particular, our School of Engineering has 8 EVAC accredited programs. Next slide, please. So as I said, I lead this center since its inception. That was in June 2020. We were the first academic center for artificial intelligence in the region. And the work in our center is focused towards AI for social good, for the good of humanity and of the planet. Next slide, please. We are about 25 professors from different schools and with different backgrounds. Each of us with our teams are also our research agenda. Next slide. We are the point of contact for Colombia for the new index for AI in the region that is going to map the adoption of these technologies in our continent. Next slide. We have activity in research and also in education at all the levels in our university. In particular, we have launched a year ago a master's with Coursera, which is completely online and has been very successful. Next slide. Our research agenda has three main topics: computer vision, global health, and sustainable development. Next slide. In computer vision, I have worked and contributed for more than 20 years to several foundation problems like segmentation, recognition, and also video analysis. More recently, we have been collaborating with some big players in AI in our problems such as vision and language, generative artificial intelligence, and augmented reality or embodied AI. Next slide. Our second main line of work is in health applications. In particular, I am part of the biomedical engineering department, so I personally work in several of these projects. We have projects in drug discovery, in diagnosis of multiple diseases, lung cancer and heart diseases. And also we had a project during the pandemic called Smart Pooling, founded by the Rockefeller Foundation to automate the diagnosis of COVID. We also have a long-standing collaboration with Fundación Santa Fe, the home for our School of Medicine, and with them we work in robotic-assisted surgery. Next slide. And then in sustainable development, we have several fields of action in geology, social robotics, and also we collaborate with a center in food security in our university. Also with Drexel University, we work on the road safety here in the city of Bogota. With Microsoft AI for Good, we work in nature conservation, the preservation of the Amazon rainforest. And of course, among all these projects, to us, it is critical to be able to apply all these technologies for the safety of children. So next slide. Thank you very much. I think those were all my slides. So I will now leave the floor to Lina.
Thank you, Paulo. And one of the things that I want to highlight about this partnership is this first attempt in the Global South to work in a very organized manner between a center that is dedicated mainly at understanding how is it that these new AI tools can be not only developed by youth, but also used, and also a university that mainly, as Universidad de los Andes, and as Paulo was mentioning, is a private university really focused on research and how to train people in doing research, and an NGO that represents civil society like Aulas en Paz. So that's one of the things that we are really, really proud of in this project, is that we are able to connect engineers with psychologists, with lawyers, and with people who are from different fields, really caring and really interested in doing something about this problem. So the other partner here is the Department of Psychology at Universidad de los Andes. Diana Agudelo is the Dean of Students at Universidad de los Andes, and also she's a clinical psychologist that belongs at the department. And basically the idea, or the department has similar lines of development and research as Pablo was mentioning for Sinfonía. So they have a research on sexual and reproductive rights and promotion of social emotional skills, violence prevention, And of course, this line of use of technologies like AI to prevent risk of abuse online for children. So it made a lot of sense to start understanding a problem from the psychology perspective, and also connect that to what Sinfonia and the trajectory of Sinfonia brought to the project. Next slide, please. And the other ally in a project, I want to explain something. So Aulas en Paz is a big started. We were born as a research program inside Universidad de los Andes, and we were from the Department of Psychology. But we would like to say that we grew and we learned a lot of things, and now we work outside the university as an NGO of our own. But we kept the same ideas that we were or we had when we were at the university. So first, we wanted to do evidence-based implementation. So we worked together with the psychology department at Universidad de los Andes on research on the research I mentioned on prevention of violence, and we tried to translate that into school peace programs and programs that are aimed at developing social emotional skills and prevention of violence. And we also do a very important bulk of our work regarding teacher training, which means that we go to the schools and we work in prevention of a lot of things. We promote mental health, we prevent violence. And we have another line of work that is fairly recent, in which we started thinking about the violence prevention problem in a different way. So it made a lot of sense for us to become partners on this project that we are talking about today. So this is a very innovative project, and that is something that we really want to highlight. When you go to the literature or you go to the different organizations that are working on this, usually there's a lot of work that is done in English, that is done for the global north, that is done even for some countries of the global south, but mainly in English. So we were able to bring this expertise from Sinfonia, from the psychology department, and from Aulas en Paz to think about this problem in an innovative manner. And we wanted to make sure that not only we were able to think the problem in a different way, but also to make some impact. So we were wondering, or we were hoping to become that ally. So Aulas en Paz was hoping to become that ally that gave the voice of how to use this data. How is it that we can just not produce academic papers, or not do something that is not done in Latin America, but how to use this data. And that is our role, and our main focus in this project is to give voice to the data. And of course, last but not least, we have two amazing allies here. Of course, one of Safe Online and the Tech Coalition, who were visionaries on these, and who are the ones that are helping us develop this project and funding these projects, and helping us think about these problems in a different way. So those are our allies, and Vigías and Red Papás. And Vigías and Red Papás in this first part of the project that we're going to present to you today are only allies, but in the second part, they are principal researchers too, and they have a very, very important role. But basically, we were able to develop this project because Red Papás and Vigías in particular is a Safer Internet Center, and they do a lot of work in thinking about how to take care of children and how to protect children on the online environment, especially here in the Latin American context. And they have done an amazing job. This center has a lot of different lines in which they develop different kind of works, but they have data not only from their reports that they receive from the Protejo, which is their report line, but also from data sets that, because of their work, they are able to access, such as the work that we're going to present to you today, that is data from the data set Atlas from WebIQ. So this partnership between our team and Red Papás and Vigías became very, very important. And we were able not only to give a specific solution through this project to some of the problems that Vigías and Te Protejo had, but also we were able to start thinking about and understanding the patterns of the conversations that the aggressors had in the Latin American context. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to present you what we did. And what we did is simple. We created some AI tools based on research evidence in the Latin American context about two things. We wanted to understand how could we help better the analysts from the Te Protejo the report line, so they were not so exposed to the crimes that are reported in the line, but also to see what was going on. And the other thing is that we wanted to take the data from the Atlas data sets, and we wanted to understand what were the aggressors talking about when they were trying to talk about abuse, online abuse in the Latin American context. And we found really interesting things. So to help us understand and see what we learned, here we have Viviana Quintero. Viviana Quintero is our digital consultant at Aulas en Paz, and she will present us the main results about the conversations of the abusers. Vivi, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, Lina. Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Today, I wanted to present the main results of our project, focusing on what we can learn for conversations among abusers to prevent online child sexual exploitation and abuse. To start, let me introduce the research model. This research model begins with two sources of information. The first one is the reports from Te Protejo hotline, as Lina said. The other part is the conversations between aggressors and sexual offenders in Darknet that were accessed through Atlas, a tool developed by WebIQ. We obtain all this data through cooperation agreement with Te Protejo, the Colombia hotline, as Lini says. Our interest by analyzing these two sources is to understand how language interactions and patterns in reports and conversations can predict the risk of victimization and abuse. One innovation of this model is that while similar information is available in English for global North countries, data in Spanish and within the Latin American context is almost non-existent. Considering this, we decided to develop two tools. Next, please. The first tool is a classifier. Using the reports from Te Protejo hotline in the categories of cyberbullying and grooming, we analyzed this report to create new data annotation system. With this system, we trained the machine to classify reports by the type of crime, its severity, and the type of harm caused to the victims. This tool delivered to the Te Protejo hotline aims to reduce the mental health risk for analysts and optimize the report processing. Juanita will soon share more details about the training process of the machine, which involves iterative learning where the analyst teaches the machine learns, and then the analyst corrects the machine learning. This process quickly showed us that the machine not only learned the analyst's logic, but also performed more objective and precise analysis. Improving all the case prioritization and analysis in the hotline. For the other hand, next slide, please. The second tool that we create is a prototype of an alert system. This tool requires the machine to analyze the conversations from aggressors or potential aggressors that are spoke about these kind of crimes through dark web. For this analysis, we use conversations from the dark web accessed through the Atlas platform by WebIQ. And our main purpose with these conversations was to find patterns between these different conversations and threats. These conversations revolve around how to commit abuse, where to find, for example, vulnerable children, how to assess their vulnerability, how to hide abuse from the families and authorities, and how to justify child sexual abuse and exploitation. We learned that this is like a space to learn how to abuse and produce the victimization for children. Next slide, please. To train the machine, the process starts with developing a new data annotation system with our analyst team members. The information that you can see in the slide now is the information that we identified after reading all the conversations and all the reports that we analyzed, in which we identified different types of perpetrator, the cognitive distortions that they have and they were spoke, and also the moral disengagement mechanism that they use to justify the abuses. Each conversation was analyzed, detailed, and classified using this system of annotation. And we follow the same iterative process that I mentioned earlier, resulting in a prototype alert system. Next, please. From the reports, we learned that abuse is not a linear process, it's a part of a continuum. For example, a grooming situation can quickly turn in a sexual extortion, or for example, a situation that happened off internet or offline, a situation of abuse can quickly turn into an online child sexual abuse and exploitation situation. This means that reports are not fixed or mutually exclusive categories, but evolves as a perpetrator interact with victims, and it happened in the different kinds of crimes related with child sexual abuse and exploitation. We also saw how criminals use the dark web as a forum to teach and learn. And they teach and learn about strategies for capturing victims, evading authorities, and using technological tools to avoid the detection of the crime. And finally, we found myriads of writings by abusers on dark web that justify the exploitation and abuse of children. One thing that is very harmful from this part is that this kind of writings makes like a normalization of the child sexual abuse and exploitation, and produces that the people that have maybe these ideas around the exploitation and of abuse normalize and naturalize the exploitative behavior. Next, please. In closing, to recognize the key learnings, it's crucial to highlight that this research made significant findings for future studies, such as the importance of collaborative work. Our team of engineers, psychologists, and lawyers contributed from different disciplines to understand this phenomenon. All of the members of our team have different views and different perspectives, and also different experiences that contribute to make a broadened perspective about this phenomenon. We also develop a tool for hotlines that is used now by Te Protejo hotline and reduces the harm and optimizes the report processing by the hotline. And finally, we create a promising alert system prototype, which will allow us to extend this research to a second phase. In this phase, we aim to develop an alert system for live streaming of abuse. This tool, we wanted that will be applied in 6 Latin American countries in cooperation with the National Intelligence Agency here in Colombia. It's a part or a dependence of National Police from Colombia, Child Light, and also we can achieve to find a second funding with Safe Online and Tech Coalition to develop this part of our research. Now with this, I am closing my part and give the floor to Lina or Juanita, who will present technical details of the development of these tools.
Perfect, Vivi. Let me close this part just by highlighting the things that you just mentioned, and they're very important. So as I mentioned before, one of the main problems that we have is that we were not able to understand what was going on in the Latin American context. in a lot of our conversations and a lot of previews tries to understand how is it that child sexual online child sexual exploitation and abuse here in the Latin American context happen, were done by using translator, basically putting all the information that we had in Spanish and trying to understand what was going on through that translation. And from what Viviana has presented us, we understand that there are some particularities about how is it that aggressors have these conversations. For instance, the ways in which they teach how to evade authorities, and authorities are particular in each area of the world. For instance, asking about the age in which children are allowed to have consent to become part of sexual relationships or things like that are the type of information or the type of data that is shared. So we were able to get a glimpse, and I want to highlight this, it was only a glimpse of what they're talking about and how is it that they can teach each other how to abuse children. And this is something that hasn't been done in the Latin American context, of course, hasn't been done in Spanish. And the only way in which we were able to do that was by creating this very articulated work with Sinfonía. And this is what Juanita is going to present us now. Vivi and the team of psychologists and lawyers were able to infer these findings and take a look at the conversations because the team of Sinfonía were able to analyze it in a very thorough manner, in a very fast way. So Juanita, welcome. Let's start talking about how is it that we were able to achieve our goals through the artificial intelligence tools that you and the Sinfonía team created. Welcome.
Thank you, Lina. Hi, everyone. My name is Juanita, and I'm a master's student of biomedical engineering with a focus on artificial intelligence. And I have been working on this project for child protection for a while. And today I'm here to present you how we develop our model and how we use AI for the prevention of CISA. So to start, I'm going to talk about the data we use to develop our model. So at first, we have a dataset of 101,096 complaints that were submitted on a CISA hotline in Colombia, and these reports were made by victims, parents, or teachers. And each one of these reports is categorized along 3 dimensions, which are subject, degree of criminality, and damage. And here, what we can see are the different classes that each one of the dimensions has. For example, subject has a total of 8 classes, in which we include sexting, grooming, and sextortion. Degree of criminality has 5 classes, and damage has 4. And what we can note and infer from these data statistics is that there are some classes that are overrepresented. For example, in the particular case of intent to harm on the dimension of degree of criminality, this specific class has more than 500 reports, while the remaining classes, for example, adult involved without consent, commercial purpose, and public distribution, contain less than 180 examples each. So it is important to consider this because we are having an imbalance problem. And this means that we are having different number of reports for each one of the classes. Now, talking about the main objective of our model, which is categorizing each complaint or report into 1 or more applicable categories, we need to consider that the model needs to extract some features in order to perform this classification. And some of these features are the correlation, sorry. So in here we have one short example to explain what are the correlations on our data. So this first example says, a predator gradually gained my trust online, then blackmailed me with explicit images I had shared, threatening to expose them unless I sent more. So this particular report in our dataset is categorized as involving sextortion as well as grooming. And as this one in our database, we have a total of 43 complaints that have also this correlation. And we are going to represent it on this way. However, we also have other examples that exhibit lower correlations. For example, this one that is right here that says an individual befriended me through a gaming platform and persuaded me to send photos, which were then shared on a public forum. So it is having a correlation between distribution of photos and videos and grooming. However, on our dataset, we have just one example that has this correlation. And now with this explanation, we can understand what is happening with this matrix. So we have here the one example I explained you, 43 from grooming and sextortion. And we also have the one that has distribution of photos and videos and sextortion. So we can classify them as having different levels of correlation. So here, for example, having a strong correlation as the one between grooming and sextortion means that if a report is classified as having grooming, there is a high likelihood of it having sextortion as well. And that is exactly what we want our model to do, like to model these correlations in order to perform the report's classification. Now, to understand the method, what we had at first is the raw complaint or report that is made by the victim or the parents usually. And what we do at first is a pre-processing where we remove the personal information, for example, URLs, telephone and ID numbers or emails. In this particular case, then we remove this telephone number. And then what we do is a tokenization process where we take this post-process complaint and we split it into the words. And then to each one of the words, we assign a number. So in this process, what we are doing is transforming that initial text into a numerical list. And this is done since computer cannot process text as we humans do. They need a numerical representation of what a text is. And then this numerical representation goes into the main core of our architecture that is called a transformer. And what is a transformer? So it is an artificial intelligence model used especially for natural language processing. And it is trained on all the internet corpus. In this special case, we use a transformer trained on different languages. And this is what makes us able to process these reports that are in Spanish. And the output of this model is then a probability of belonging to each one of the classes. In this particular case, for example, we are considering the degree of criminality. So we have these 5 classes and we get a probability for each one of them. So for example, for public distribution, we get 50%. And what we do next is to establish a threshold. For example, now we assign it to 40%. And the classes that have a bigger probability than this threshold are then going to be, we are going to keep them, and the other ones are going to be gray in this case. And what it means on our final prediction is that the ones that have a bigger probability, we assign a label 1, and the ones that have a lower probability, we assign a label of 0. And on that way, this is the final prediction of our model. That is a binary vector that indicates which classes are positive for our report. Now, I will explain what is data augmentation and why did we use this strategy on our approach. So given how difficult it is to get these reports due to the sensitive content, we didn't have enough data to train this model as we would like to. So what we did was to take a complaint that is the one we had on the previous example. And what we do is to split it by different words. And for each one of the words, we compute a random probability of deleting this word, like for removing it. So we decide if we keep or remove each one of the words. And finally, what we did was to join all the remaining words. And what we get is a new report that we can use on our database to train our model. So now we have this example right here that is in green and the one also in yellow. So we get 2 examples just from one original. Now, I'm going to explain you how did we analyze the results of our model. So at first, let's consider this box right here that is the legend. So the P refers to the prediction of our model and A to the annotation. With annotation, we refer to the label an expert did about each specific category. So This annotation refers to what we want our model to predict. It is what is actually correct. So for this specific example, what we do is to classify it along the 3 dimensions that we already know, which are subject, degree of criminality, and damage. And then for each one, we have all the classes we have already seen, and we have the vector of the annotation, which is the thing that is actually correct. And each one of these, we compare them with our prediction that is also a binary vector. And here by classes, we can compare if the prediction and the annotation matches. For example, here in sexual cyberbullying, our model is saying that there is sexual cyberbullying, and the annotations says the same. However, there are other examples, for example, as extortion, where the prediction says there is extortion. However, the annotation and what the expert says is that there's not sextortion on this case. And by comparing these matches and mismatches is that we compute our classification metric. Now, I'm going to explain you the results of our model. So at first, we need to consider that we computed the average precision metric. And what is important to know from this metric is that it quantifies how good our classification is. So the higher this metric, the better. And in here, I'm showing you the results for each one of the classes. At first, before showing you the results of our model, it is important to consider which one is the probability of correctly classifying one report purely by chance. So what we can see here is that as the number of classes increases, the random probability decreases. And what it shows is the increased complexity of correctly classifying a report. And then considering this probability, we computed our performance without data augmentation. It means with the original database. And here are the results after making data augmentation. So what these results demonstrate is that our approach is a proof of concept capable of modeling these behaviors and patterns that aggressors have with the victims. And additionally, these results with data augmentation show that having more data can improve our model performance, and it is essential for making a bigger impact on child protection efforts. As the key insights, finally, we have that it is strategic tools, especially for analysts, because for an analysis, it takes around 25 minutes to discern subject, degree of criminality, and damage within a single report. And when using this model, this extensive time can be significantly reduced. Also, using a language model as a guidance tool can assist them to make these reports and also to classify them faster and protect more children around the world. And finally, what this project does is to highlight the important role of artificial intelligence in a task that is different from typical AI tasks. And this shows the full spectrum of capabilities that AI has in child protection, especially. Thank you.
Thank you, Juanita. And I really want to highlight from Juanita's presentation that this process, it was a process that, yes, it was led by Sinfonia and by the key insights that they were able to show us in terms of how to analyze the data. But as Vivi said, and as Juanita showed continuously in the presentation, is that this was in an iterative process. And we realized that the importance of having a multidisciplinary team was not only because each of us knew about different things, but that in order to build a tool that was useful, that was practical, that it was actually understanding the characteristics of the problems that we were analyzing, we needed to have that conversations between the team and between the people who were involved in the different parts of the team. So we were really, really excited also to develop another part of our work by creating a clinical protocol and a self-care clinical protocol for the researchers. So as you all know, and we have shown you through the conversation, we were exposed to a lot of information. And that information ranged from simple reports that were done by children to Te Protejo saying, I'm being harassed by someone online, and also by reports of people who were saying my child is being victim of sextortion, but also we had information from the dark web that was retrieved from the dark web using the Atlas engine, saying these are the things that you can do to a child, or you can say to a child if you wanted to obtain pictures from that person. So if you see, the kind of information is really, really damaging, and the effect on the trauma that this information can do is really, really harmful and something very complicated. And we were faced with this necessity of making sure that the team was fine. And for the first time also, because we were working in this close relationship between engineers, psychologists, and lawyers, we needed to develop tools that protect ourselves in different levels. One level of researchers, one level of analysts, and one level of the general team that's what looking for that. So those are the results that I'm going to present to close this part of the results of our project that I'm going to present to you right now. And is, how is it that the Department of Psychology, and specifically through the work that Diana and the clinical team did, we were able to create a safe space for all the persons who were involved. And one of the things, there's a lot of evidence, and Diana and I have brought here a couple of ideas that are very important to think about when you're talking about people who work with this type of information, and the evidence that shows the trauma and the effects, the negative effects that this type of information can have in people. So for instance, there's a myriad of studies that says that there's a relationship between negative mental health and working or being exposed constantly to this type of information through processes that are called, for instance, compassion fatigue or vicarious trauma. Also, these same studies show that there is a need for the people who are working on this type of area to work on things related to self-care and to minimize the risk that this information have and promote their well-being and their satisfaction with the work. And also, we were faced with this question of, okay, we know, and through the work of Te Protejo and the people, the psychologist and the clinical team that helps the analyst of Te Protejo, we were very or fairly sure about how to do this with analysts, so the people who are constantly working with this information, but we were not sure how to go about the work with researchers. So for instance, and I'm going to talk about it about this in a little bit later with more detail, but for instance, how is it that you take care of a person who is a researcher, an engineer like Juanita, or one of the persons who are in the Sinfonía team that shouldn't be exposed to this information, that in order to solve this problem, we need to talk about this problem, but we need to make sure to take care of them. So we were faced with this evidence and tried to create a solution for this. Next slide, please. We also knew, and this is mainly through the clinical work that Diana and the psychology department team has done, that there were also very clear risk factors to the people or for the people who work with this type of information. So for instance, we knew from studies that being a young woman with little professional academic experience could be a risk factor. Also, it could be a risk factor to spend long hours of exposure to this material. Also, if you have limited or you don't have coping strategies for distress, also that puts you in a risk factor for mental health problems, or even having poor self-care strategies. We identified those risk factors that we needed to assess in the team. So we developed this model in which we needed to create a tool that was useful, that was going to be useful for researchers. So that by that, it means the engineers that were working with us, for the analysts, so for the team, the part of the team who was actually looking at the data and reading the data, and in general for all the team that is related, even if they were not doing analysis. So the whole team that is related to the project, that in some way, some more, some less, but in some way, everyone was going to be connected to the information that we were talking about and the harmful impact, and they were going to be exposed in different ways to the harmful impact that this information has. Next slide, please. So we created 3 tools, or we aim to create tools, I'm sorry, for 3 groups. So we were aiming to create tools for analysts. So for the people who actually had contact with the data and look at the data that we were analyzing. And remember that we were talking about first reports, and then we were talking about the conversations of the aggressors or abusers that we retrieved from the dark web. Then we needed to create tools to the people who were processing the data, and this is actually something or a key finding or a key learning from us, that it was absolutely powerful, because it showed us the importance of the connection between the team. So we needed to make sure that no one from the Sinfonía team would ever see, read, or understand the data. And Juanita explained it in a very, very thorough manner. And is that with the help of the team of Sinfonía, we created a way in which we turn the sentences and the words and the paragraphs and all these ideas into numbers. So then when the Sinfonía team had to go and see the data, they wouldn't understand anything, because the only thing that they would look at, it was numbers. And that was a tool for protected mental health, but it comes from the analysis of the data. It comes from the team that does the analysis and the creation of the AI tools. And it's absolutely powerful, because that means that we were able to guarantee that through a process in which they did this mathematical, I wouldn't be able to do what Juanita just explained, because that's part of the work that Sinfonía did. They were able to protect themselves and shield themselves from the harmful and negative impact that this type of information has on people. So that was another way in which we assured that we were taking care of the well-being. And it was amazing. And it was, I think, one of the main and biggest accomplishments of the project. We can protect researchers. In order to analyze a very complicated and delicate problem like the one that we are looking at, they don't need to read the data. They don't need to to be exposed to harm themselves. And then we needed to also take care of the team who were actually, that were more like the analysts that Te Protejo has. So people who are constantly exposed to this type of information, as I said, through the reports or through the information that we were retrieving from Atlas. And this tool provided a couple of different activities that we needed to do. We needed to do things that implied we had the briefing sessions. We had things like working outside the home environment, like rotating activities, restricting the exposure, the hours of exposure to this type of materials, engaging in activities, purposely engaging in activities of self-care, depending on the data we were analyzing data. And one of the things that in which Diana has been very strongly recommended this is that we foster conversations about value, purpose, and meaning, which is sometimes, and I guess a lot of people who work in this area can feel devastated or hopeless when you are exposed to this type of information. And she was always encouraging us to go and talk about meaning, to go and talk about things that are important for us, that gives meaning in our lives and connect us to life. And that was one of the things that I feel, and after talking to the team, was very, very useful. Next slide, please. So in the end, we produced through this clinical component 2 things. The first one was an evaluation and a support protocol for researchers, analysts, and the team in general. It had a baseline assessment. So Diana and the clinical team did a baseline assessment using 4 psychological questionnaires that were already validated for the Colombian context: the compassion, self-satisfaction, 4, no, 3, I'm sorry. Compassion, satisfaction, and compassion fatigue questionnaire, the coping strategies questionnaire, and the self-care evaluation questionnaire. And through the results of those questionnaires, Diana and the clinical team was able to design a plan, either for the researchers or either for the analysts, on how to take care of ourselves, and I'm including myself in that part. And then after that, she created an individual self-care plan. So each of us had different restrictions. Some of us, for instance, were working from home. So the university offered an office at the university, so we could go and work there and take a look at the data there. So we were not putting together being at home and being exposed to this harmful information, and that plan varied for each of the persons. And the other thing was the individual follow-up. And the second thing that we developed was a toolkit. Through this process, we identified certain areas mainly related to what I was saying about constructing purpose, meaning, and really being connected to things that were important to us as a protecting factor against the negative effects of disinformation. So we created a toolkit that it's located in a website inside Aulas en Paz, with resources, with clinical resources or simple resources that either us researchers or even parents and family can use and can read. And they're very simple, self-contained activities of self-care to make sure that we keep connected to the purpose and meaning I was talking about. The next slide. And that's it. Oh, wow. I didn't remember that we were finishing here. Great. Okay. So the whole 3 presentations that we just did are a very brief and concrete summary of a very long 2-year process of putting this together. And this is me, the director of the project, now taking a step back and looking at what we did. One of the greatest things about this is that when we started, we just knew that there was something wrong, that we needed to understand, and the understanding this type of crime and this type of abuse in our context, in our language, was extremely important. And that was the premise. We had a model, and the Sinfonía team was fairly sure of how to develop these type of models, but not necessarily regarding this information. And the analysts that worked with us were sure that they were able to find categories of information and create annotation systems like the one that you just saw Vivi present us. But we were able to elaborate and put pieces together through the process. It was a very, very iterative process of going back and forth for creating this type of tool. So it makes me very happy to be able to present this to you and to show you that in the end, this just like diving into this information and trying to get out information with this data and make sense and create tools was something that it required a lot of effort, but we're really proud of the things that we did. So to close this session, we're going to have a conversation. I don't think Natalie was able to join, I think, but well, I'm really sorry about that. But we have Maria Paula Ruge and we have Alejandro Castañeda. Maria Paula, it's from the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children in Latin America. And Alejandro is the director of the Safer Internet Center, Vigías, which I have been mentioning as one of the most important allies in our process. And what we're gonna have in this conversation, in this part of the conversation, is just like basically trying to figure out these results and what do they mean, and how is it that these type of results are helping us understand the problem in Latin America. So Alejandro and Maria Paula, welcome. I'm really happy to see you here.
Thank you, Lina, and thank you, the team of Universidad de los Andes, Aulas, and Sinfonía for these results that are very insightful for the work that we are doing in Colombia and, of course, in Latin America.
Thank you, Alejandro. Are you? There you are. I didn't see.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us and be able to join us in the presentation.
Perfect. Okay, so let's start this conversation about thinking about the Latin American context, which is something that makes me, and I was trying to say that we were purposely trying to do something different from the global south. And it's not that we don't like what the global north is doing or the other countries doing. That's amazing. But through our work, and especially through the work that you guys have been doing in your organizations, it's clear that there are some specificities here in the Latin America. So the first question that I wanted to ask you is, how is it that these findings feed into the international landscape that we have? So how is it that we help advance the understanding of this problem in the world by focusing on Latin America? I don't know which one of you wants to start. Maria Paula, now that you smile.
Okay, well, I think these results are very useful for the Latin America context, because as you say, we have a lot of research from different countries, but we need to understand that the Latin America countries have different contexts. We are a diverse community. We have different traditions, cultures that are not being seen by the research from other side of the other sides of the world, like Europe, like Asia. So the first thing that I'm glad to look at results are that they are very close to the things that are happening here in Colombia and here in Latin America. I know that each country in Latin America have different regulations, have different things or forms to address these type of issues, but one of the things that gather here is the language. And the language, I think it's completely different from the USA, completely different from Europe, and this is one of the main ideas or insights that you said before. So I think that these results might help us to help us to identify, or just not identify, but how can we cross these results with other results across the world, because we know that these crimes not just happened within the Latin American countries, but also might be I don't know, it might be happening here in Colombia, but the aggressor might be in another part of the country, but they begin to understand how the people here in the Latin America behave, so they can learn from that to create new forms and new ways to gather or to capture children from Latin America. So I think this is very insightful to create ways to prevent and to learn, to learn and to show the children's parents, caregivers, the whole society, to prevent this type of language, to prevent this type of communication between the aggressors and the potential victims.
Great, great. Thank you very much, María Paula. Let me ask something. Alex, Natalie está aquí. Si me puedes, por favor, ponerla en la pantalla. So Natalie is here. We're very excited. And to give her, dale acceso, por favor, al micrófono a la cámara. Okay, great. Alejo, how do you see this? How is this going to help us understand the Latin American context and this type of crimes for Latin America?
I mean, I'm not going to say something that Maria Paula hasn't spoken, but I want to highlight something that was very important for us in how we see the reports and the situation that happens in regards of cyber harassment and all kinds of information that regards situation that is happening to children and adolescents in Colombia, is that for the first time, we are seeing the need to have tools that are developed from Colombian and from Spanish-speaking context in order to understand what is happening. Maybe for a long time, we have been understanding from the reports how are the situation going on, but these kind of tools that are developed from Colombian context and from the victim's speech itself, are very useful for us and very powerful for us to understand that there are connections to some things that we are seeing, and that's something that Juanita told us, that there are correlations and situations that happens that brings together some situation that is bigger, and those understanding helps us to identify those common trends of threats that are happening international, how to understand that in the national context, but not also to from a research side, not only to understand per se, but also to bring something for action, to be able to yes, to have something to work on, and to be able to understand and to be able to make use of it, to bring those victims something useful for them. So as we see this kind of tools, is that we are for the first time and seeing something in Spanish-speaking countries that will be useful to understand what's happening in the context. That's the first part. But the second part, these tools are something useful to practitioners, to industry, and maybe Natalie is going to have that expert, because they are something that we can use and is useful to use, in not only to understand what's happening, but also to make something about it, to understand, not only to make sure, and for us in our hotlines may be useful to understand what can we do with the reports, to understand the situation, to the seriousness and the level of threat and the level of harm that is going on with those reports, and understand if there's something else that we are intending to do, or if there's something else that we can do in order to prevent or to alleviate that harm toward that victim itself. So those two understanding brings this project into a more useful part for us, not only for Colombia, but also to Latin America in next steps that we can achieve.
And fantastic, Alejo. I think that you are mentioning this connection between what we are doing and the government and the authorities and the industry, and the following challenge that we have, or the challenge that we have now, is how to make sure that this first attempt to understand those patterns that we are talking about and the ways in which they have these conversations give us information that is valuable, in terms that is actionable, in terms that it gives the industry information that it's sensitive or important or useful for them to design the tools that they are designing in order to develop their platforms or the security for their platforms. So that is a very important way of doing this abstract. Natalie, welcome. We're really happy to have you. Great.
Thank you so much, Tina.
Natalie, we were just starting, no worries. So we just started a couple of minutes before. But I want to ask you the same question that I asked to Maria Paula and Alejandro, and it's about the importance of understanding these in Latin America. and because of you have been working with projects around the world to understand the myriad of research projects and the tools that we have been developed. But we feel really proud, and not only this project, but also ECMEC and Te Protejo and Villas of this, like thinking about this problem in our context. So how do you see this, and how is it that these results in the Latin American context can contribute to understanding to this problem worldwide? What do you think?
Thank you so much, Lina. And yes, I apologize so much that for the technical difficulties connecting while I'm on the road, but I'm so glad I could join. And thank you so much for inviting me to kind of speak on behalf of the Research Fund and Safe Online. As you said, from Safe Online's perspective, you know, we are a global fund that is funding nearly over 100 projects in over 80 countries now. So we fund every region of the world, and we do have wonderful grantees and partners in Latin America. And you all as Los Andes have now been a very long-standing partner and grantee with Safe Online. And I think what we were very excited about in particular, and where we see so much opportunity, not only for some of the outputs, but especially a lot of the learnings that you all have done through this project and have been able to share and hopefully continue to share through the Tech Coalition, Safe Online Research Fund, and other parts of our community, is looking at, and I'm sure, you know, I'll repeat some of what has been said, but I think it's worth repeating a little bit because it is really important to note that as much as we are doing work globally and in every region of the world, doing work in non-English languages is still very underrepresented and very underfunded. And so that is very difficult in terms of the approaches, the data sets, the different, you know, cultural context being reflected through every step of sort of those different, whether it's research or technology tools or systems work. We work with fantastic partners who are working in local languages, but often the projects themselves, you know, are not completely in non-English languages. And I think that is something that we see a huge gap in the ecosystem and are really trying to find different innovative, creative ways to promote and support that type of work. And I think the work you all are doing and have done with this project is incredible for that reason, among many others. But I think one thing that we've definitely taken as learning so far, and that there's a lot of interest as well from industry, and I think opportunity for exchange is not only on the topic itself or on the tools themselves, but also on the learnings that you've taken from doing work in non-English languages, in generating non-English data sets, and in being able to kind of exchange that knowledge you've gained around the process itself of how do you do this work in other languages, because tech industry would like to do that. That is a huge interest as well. I know from a lot of our partners and the members at Tech Coalition, where we hear that they would like to learn more and exchange more, not only around sort of the outputs and topics that you all have researched, but what you've learned as part of the methodology for doing this work in non-English languages. And I think that's very important.
Perfect, thank you. And that actually leads me to the next question, because one of the things and one of the challenges that we have from now on is how to translate this. We have a very clear idea of how to do it with, for instance, researchers, but I wanted you guys to help me think about our relationship with the industry. A lot of these things happen in platforms, and there are a lot of things that the industry are doing to prevent these types of crimes and things that we could work together with. And I know, for instance, Maria Paula, ECMEC, and TikTok you guys have recently worked together in creating materials for families. But how can you see us in this type of research projects like the one where we are presenting today, working together with the industry to make sure that these results are applicable and useful for the tech industry? I don't know who wants to go first. Alejo?
I just want to first to talk about locally, and maybe later we will go to international, because even if we are talking about social media and all this platform and industry, we have a lot of local players here that are not only hosting the images, because that's one of parts of digital risk, but also are engaging with some kinds of chats and all kinds of platforms that are language oriented. So these kind of tools could help them realize that there are some tools that they could understand in order to identify all possible threats. So if we go on, we have the TikToks, we have the Metas, we have the Google, that maybe they are interested in providing and be able to understand this kind of tools. There are a lot of local industry in Colombia and Latin America that builds chat rooms, that builds communities that are not well protected because there are not a lot of tools that are Spanish oriented for that protection. So my first mission will be to understand who or where are those services provided, and maybe to understand how to reach them and be able to give them those kind of tools in order to have a more locally focused mind prevented, because maybe those big players have their developments and their tools and that conversation will be a little more difficult from my understanding.
Perfect, thank you.
I think I can
Natalie?
build on that a little bit as well. So I think just kind of building, yes, off of Alejo, what you've pointed out very well is kind of, I think, speaking to the heterogeneous nature of industry. And I think that's something we've discussed a lot, Lena, with the different research grantees as well, with the Tech Coalition Safe Online Research Fund, is that we are really trying to build bridges and open sort of trusted spaces for bi-directional knowledge exchange. So I think that piece is very important. So there's two things there. I think there's the heterogeneous nature of industry. So you're speaking about big tech companies, and they're going to have a certain set of tools already in place and processes and much, maybe perhaps different frameworks by which they're working on these issues already quite actively. And how do you fit your tools into a combination of tools that maybe they already have? And that's a different conversation than perhaps with small, medium-sized companies who maybe have very little capacity or resource for trust and safety, or just are at the very beginning stages of that, and building that in early into how they operate could be really influential as they grow. And it could look very different from a conversation with a big tech company that already has a trust and safety sort of embedded in different ways. And the way that trust and safety is built into different companies is also different. So not only are the services themselves very different, and the ways companies are set up very different, but also the way that you build in trust and safety into the work is different. And so I think creating those trusted spaces, which has been a big aim of this collaboration, to have people come in with their different perspectives into a space and really exchange both ways with curiosity, has been incredibly beneficial. I think I've seen to people understanding not only where are limitations from researcher side and from industry side, and how can we start to break down maybe what are perceived barriers rather than real barriers to collaborating together, because I think there are both, and maybe starting with those ones that are a little bit easier to tackle, because it just comes from sort of being able to be in the same room and speak the same language and connect a little bit more. I think that's one really great starting point that we've seen, but then also being able to create space to see not only how can you translate some of those tools that you've created that are very valuable for different stakeholders like government, like hotlines, like others, but also for industry. But I think it was actually something you said, Lena, once that really struck me after one of our research convenings, which was that maybe not only that is incredibly valuable, but also all these other things that have come out of the process, the data sets you've created, maybe the methodologies that you all took, the way that you developed processes to safeguard your researchers as they were dealing with really difficult content. Like all of those aspects are also incredibly valuable potentially to tech industry. And so being able to bring those and present them in a way that, is a conversation would open up more opportunities for where there's the best fit, I think, for some of those solutions. And I think that's a really important piece of the process too.
Fantastic. No, and I forgot to say that, but great. Thank you for reminding me. But yeah, like I feel that you both have pointed out some very important things. It's not just the tool. Yes, we created two very amazing, incredible tools that are useful for Te Protejo, that it's going to help us build this alert system, but it's about the learning process. It's about what we have learned. And for instance, a lot of the things that we're talking about, and the reason, for instance, Maria Paula is here, it's because she's having a different type of conversation. ICMEC is having a different type of conversations, and just like having these opportunities to share what we have done, it's in a way, it's in itself a way of working with the industry, working with different stakeholders, and make this process make sense to everyone, and let everyone take the part that is useful for them. So thank you very much for that, Natalie. I don't know, Maria Paula, if you want to add something to this point.
Yes, I want to point out two things. I think one of the first thing is, like Juanita just said, that the tool fit from different reports and different communications. So we know that the industry have the safety area, and they have a lot of analysts working to prevent that those type of content are uploaded to the different platforms. So one of the things that we can try to do is, how can we work with the industry so they can strengthen the tool, so the tool can still like learning from new modalities, new dynamics that can be seen in the different platforms. That is one of the things. And the second one is around the mental health. As you said, you have developed some toolkits, you have developed a lot of things, you have developed from for Te Protejo, for the research, for the practitioners, but the industry had like more than, well, each platform have more than 40,000 analysts identifying this type of things. I don't know, I really don't know if they are also working for the analysts to protect their mental health, because of course they need to analyze each report. If the AA doesn't identify the reports and the reports are uploaded and then the people report it or block them, how can we offer the industry, like you said, Natalie, a bi-directional work, if we can offer them a toolkit to protect their analysts, and they can give us or help us to improve, because they are very experts in the technical area, and we need to understand that they are improving not just new measures or new dynamics in their platforms, but they can have like the human resource to strengthen these technical measures to protect children. So I think it's like a bi-directional. We protect them, their analysts, but they can give us more tools or more mechanisms to strengthen the protection, the privacy, the security around their platforms.
Perfect, great. Okay, now I wanted to ask you about, and specifically talking about the tool that we developed for Te Protejo. So this is a tool that basically optimizes the time in which an analyst can process a report and send it to the correct authorities. How is it, Alejo and Maria Paula and Natalie, if you have also thoughts on this, that the results that we have here, or the experience even, Alejo, that you had using the tool, applying the tool, helping us build the tool, how do you think this could make or improve the works that hotlines are doing in Latin America? Correct me if I'm wrong, Alejo, but Latin America is still in the process of creating the hotlines. There are not that many. We have Te Protejo Mexico, we have Te Protejo Colombia, we have the one in Brazil that I'm blanking.
SaferNet in Brazil.
SaferNet on Brazil and Groom in Argentina, and that's basically it. The other countries are in the process of creating, but we still lack a lot of reporting mechanisms in our context. So how do you think this type of work could help them organize the lines or do their work?
First, my first thought of that is that for the first time we have the opportunity to understand that our reports are not only for making the like the process of building the trust with law enforcement, with authorities, but from the reports that people trust with us and trust the information, their descriptions, the situations. We are, for the first time ever, trying to do something more about it. And this is not minor. This is something that empowers us to make it and to think that the work that we've done are not useful for the situation itself and to make some administrative process in order to understand what's happening, but also to entrust us that we are useful in so many ways, more than that. So this is something that when I talk to other people in Latin America and especially with these hotlines and the organization that are trying to build something, this is something I always tell them that not only we are an organization that are in between of the authorities and the LAs, but we are so much more. And this is something that we show us that there's so much that we can do. And in Latin America, we for the last 2 years have created this awareness center that in the Safer Internet Center in Te Protejo has built the understanding that we need to do more research because we have 12 years of data. We have 12 years of understanding what's going on in Colombia. And this is something that Te Protejo Mexico is starting doing right now. And for this kind of things, that this is something that is a tool that will help us understanding, and with our more data and more reports that we are receiving, will become much better over time. But it's not for my side, it's not only for that, but all the situation and all the project gave us the understanding that we can do much more, and we can empower not only us at the hotlines to understand and to be able to do research on that, but to be able to give the voices of the victims much more to do, and to be able to understand that what they are reporting, they are not just reporting in order to make useful for that situation and to be able to prevent the situation, but they will also help us to understand this issue from a much national-wide perspective, and also from the regional-wise perspective. So that's
Okay, but and let me just, before Natalie and Maria Paula speak again, let me elaborate a little bit on what you're saying. And one of the things for the people who are seeing us, Te Protejo a couple of days ago did an amazing event that was called Conectados para Protegerlos, connected to protect them. And one of the things that I heard you saying, Alejo, is that Teguio, which is one of the lines of the Safer Internet Center, is part of the work that Teguio does is to help people understand that there's some things that they're maybe thinking or feeling that are not necessarily normal, and that are not necessarily part of a like a healthy sexual behavior, and that they need to talk about it. They could talk about those things. So I was thinking that another thing that that you could benefit from this is that the information that we have is on those essays. And I don't know if you remember, Bibi presented that there are tons, like there are thousands of lines regarding why is it that it's okay to abuse children. And it's like, it's a complete psychological mechanisms of people rationalizing abuse. And that was, at least for me, one of the most striking things about the things that we found on the data. So maybe also, and there are different levels in which we can connect with the Safer Internet Centers and with the other lines in the rest of the Latin American countries, of let's see how we can give back this information, or how is it that we need to tell people how to have conversations about sexuality and thinking about sexuality, which is a whole other level of using the data, as Natalie was reminding me. Thank you, Alejo. Sorry about that. Maria Paula?
Yes, I want to see it from another perspective, because in ICMEC we work in different levels and in different countries. We have work currently working in Honduras, in El Salvador, in Mexico, in Guatemala, in Panama, and we look that not every country have the same like regulation. Specifically in Colombia, we have a very strong regulation, but we see, for example, in El Salvador, that they do not have regulation regarding this issue. So the first thing that I can see, like in a high level perspective, it's working with the government to help them understand the issue and the need to create these like types of bills, different types of laws. First, to strengthen the protection for children, the children protection, and I saw in these findings that we already have a baseline for the Latin America region. With this baseline, we can go and make advocacy with the governments, with the different sectors. So we can start, like Alejandro says, we can start not just like creating a legal framework for hotlines, but a legal framework for children, online children's rights. And I think this is the best way, based on data, because one of the main lack that have the LATAM region is the lack of data about this, about the online child sexual exploitation and abuse. We have data about sexual violence, but it's like in a general general scope. So if we can gather this information, if we can have these results to show the importance, to track, to identify, to like put this into the public conversations, I think we can address not just creating like safer internet, but we can create a more safety space for children.
Perfect. Thank you, Maria Paula. Natalie?
Yes, just to add, I guess, a little bit here, I think it's super fascinating to hear, you all talk about kind of the landscape and how this is contributing to that evolving. And I think one aspect we also see kind of just from our perspective with Safe Online is the not only collaboration between different organizations that form this ecosystem and come from different perspectives being incredibly beneficial, but also regionally, there is sort of spotlight of focus. And I know a lot of really good moments for attention this year in particular in Latin America. There's the Violence Against Children Ministerial that's being held in November in Colombia. So I think taking advantage of those moments to be able to spotlight the incredible efforts that are happening to kind of hopefully set that as good practice in the region so that you're building on what already exists and not sort of starting and trying to kind of build from new. And equally, I think a lot of lessons that you all have taken, I see from exchange with grantees in other regions of the world, where maybe there is a more developed hotline landscape and that you are very well connected and thoughtful about collaborating with people in other regions as well, who have maybe developed different aspects of the ecosystem in different ways or further at this stage. And I think that piece of building this network up is really important.
Perfect. Thank you, Natalie. Okay, so we're starting to running out of time, but I don't want you to leave before we talk about challenges. So up until this point, we have talked about the things that we really think are working, that it's giving you a new perspective, new hope, new possibilities, new ideas on how to connect with law enforcement authorities, the industry, and so on. But there are certain things that I guess that from you, from the role that you play in the organizations you are clear now. And I want us to close this conversation talking about the challenges and also talking about a few ideas on how to overcome them, or even if those challenges could be overcome with the things that we have talked about when thinking about this result. So what are the challenges that you see to tackle this problem in this Latin American context, or from the perspective of a hotline or report line like Te Protejo, or even in the perspective of ICMEC, Maria Paula, which you were talking about, the lack of resources, legal resources in the different countries to tackle this problem, or even from the Safe Online perspective. Who would like to start? Alejo.
I have the information very fresh because we did last week. We had 5 days of thinking about these issues, and And maybe what I have realized, and maybe from the conclusions of those discussions, are two main things. One is to be able to have data. As Maria Paula said, there is a lack and a need of data. What you did, the aulas and all other projects that we are now receiving around data from Colombia to Colombia must be something that we do regularly. We receive a lot of times trends and data and statistics from international organizations, and we receive data from the Global Threat Assessment from We Protect, and from there we understand some issues that are happening internationally, but there is a need to understand what's going on in Colombia and regionally what is going on in regards of CISA and all of that. So that's a big issue. There has been a lot of steps this years regarding how can we understand better those things, but we need to do it more like we have to do it more regularly. We don't have to rely of some projects that say let's do this and launch some data this year, but this is something that governments should do, and that these issues should be understood from data sets that are well represented. So that's one of the issues that we realize, and the other issue is from national cooperation. And this is something that ICMEC does very well, and that we are trying to also, we have been trying to work very hard to do this, to understand that there are a lot of players in this space in order to safeguard children online. So this tool is very important from my perspective, is very important because they give something to do to more players in regards of this child sexual exploitation, and this is something that maybe industry is more inclined to use, because we have police departments that are not always talking the same language, not always talking all together in regarding what the situation are happening, and these kinds of inoperation and this lack of organizations hits very hard when we try to report and we try to understand what's going on, and we try to protect children. So this kind of bringing together this co-responsibility between different kind of players, it will be very important moving forward in understanding that we all take a role. So we are sitting here talking about the academia role, and this is some new player that is coming on, and this is something that we are trying to understand and be able to bring together this kind of alliance in Colombia to understand that this is something that we have to do together. So I mean, I think talking about challenges, but also we are understanding that there are answers coming on, and there's something that we are trying to do. And in Colombia, we saw that there are some things that we are doing, and we're trying to make these efforts regarding that. So that's maybe where I start talking about challenges.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Alejo. I don't know who wanna go next time, Maria Paula?
Okay. I see different challenges, but also with challenges came the opportunities to work. And one of the things is that I currently see that these spaces are, or these conversations, always or most of the times are with the same people, with the same people that work around these issues, that knows that we are all experts in the field, but we need to try to create a strategy to go further with other organizations, other sectors. For example, we can go, how can we go and offer these results to, I don't know, not just different ministries, the Justice Ministry, or different NGOs, or different industry, not just the tech industry, but other industry that might have that they might have like a responsibility around protecting children. This is one of the challenges, that how can we offer them, and how can we show them these results, and how can they like create strategies to help us like protect children online. The second one is about the authorities. I talk about like the Colombian authorities because they are very like a bureaucratic organization entity. How can we offer them this tool, not just the tool, but how can we offer them the results of this project to help them understand the different correlationships between the dynamics? Because one of the things that happened is when it's a prosecution process, they go to the prosecution area, and some of the investigations just don't like finish and don't identify the aggressor or the victim, because they just like see one type of crime, but they don't see the whole scope, the whole dynamic of the crime itself. So they just like take the one or the two articles of the penal code, and they stay there. And most of the investigation just don't finish like in a positive way, like if you can say it like that, because of that. So we need, of course, to create an awareness inside the authorities, inside those organizations, to understand the new emerging crimes, the new emerging dynamics, and not just stay with the crimes or the dynamics that we already know. We need to go further, and we need to identify the new emergings, and I think these tools can help us identify that. Go to the authorities and like prevent it. Hey, this is what is happening. Possibly it's just few cases, but we need to be prepared if something new is happening. We are facing the challenges with the AA, we're facing the challenges to identify, to investigate live streaming things. So we need, I think this tool can help us to strengthen those research, those ideas that we have, and to improve not just the human resources, but the technical resources and the different mechanisms that we can like create or develop baseline or on these results.
Perfect, Maria Paula, thank you. Yeah, I absolutely agree with the fact that some of the part of the problem, it's when it comes to the authorities and the system, the legal system around, at least here in our context, is very difficult to go through that. Okay, and finally, Natalie.
Yes, well, I fully agree with what Alejo and Maria Paula have said. I think that just to underscore the data that you all have generated with this work is extremely valuable. And as you mentioned again, Lena, I think there's many applications of that and ways, you know, we can think about creative data sharing and creative ways to apply some of that, or the methodologies behind that as well, and what you've built around that. So I think that filling the data gap is hugely important, because that is a huge challenge, is the evidence and data. And I think another challenge with evidence and data that we see is actually data around evaluating tools and having standards of evaluation and being able to assess what is good, what is useful, what is comparable to other tools that exist and to other data sets that exist and things like that. So I think just that not only data and evidence around the context of the problem or the problem itself, but also around the use of tools and how, and speaking particularly to industry, you know, how do you benchmark tools and assess, in the sense that these are heterogeneous, you know, services, which one is best for this purpose. And right now there's limited, if not any, you know, very little evaluation data or frameworks and standards around how you evaluate these tools in these settings. And so I think that's a really crucial thing that we see as a challenge kind of across the ecosystem, because that's true for law enforcement, you know, using tools, that's true for government, being able to create legislation to mandate and assess if something is compliant, and, you know, or what is good practice. And it's true for industry and trying to assess sort of the best combination of tools. And I think that speaks to another challenge potentially, which is that, of course, you know, I think everyone has spoken to this quite a bit, but there's no one size fits all when it comes to these very complex challenges in different settings. And so how do you come to the right combination of tools, and how do you speak to that interoperability, and how do you start to work around that? So I think that piece of interoperability and the combination of tools that are fit for whatever purpose you're working within is really crucial. And then Maria Paula actually, in speaking, sort of reminded me, I think, of a last bit that I've seen. It's a challenge, but one that we're trying to address, and I think have seen really great learnings with the Tech Coalition and the Research Fund, is the feedback loops, and creating those more real-time feedback loops between different actors in the ecosystem. And so being able to go back and ask questions and feedback and kind of those things, you know, with industry as well. What has been really was a challenge at first when we launched the Research Fund, and that we've come to try to find more creative solutions to address, and we're continuing to try to improve on that and build, but is sort of the timelines for research and independent research or academic research are often much longer than the timelines that industry has to try to use outputs from research. And by the time the question is asked and then answered, often we're at a very different timeline, you know, in terms of just who in the ecosystem is working on different problems. And that's true of hotlines and of law enforcement. You know, everyone has their own timelines and restrictions that they're working within. And so how do you line those up when you're trying to really collaborate in an authentic way in the ecosystem? And so I think that's a really important thing to speak to as well. And I think we've learned a lot about that in terms of interim outputs, in terms of creating spaces for exchange informally that you can have before you have, you know, final outputs. But I think there's also still a lot of ways we can address that more creatively. So I would definitely, you know, speak to some of those as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to the three of you, because I think that the ideas and the answers that you have given us to the questions that we ask are not only allow us to think about the results in a different way, but also think about new ways of using this information. So it's really good. And I'm always very like conflicted because there are a lot of things that we need to talk about in Spanish, and we need to be able to show in English. So yeah, this is a very interesting conversation about the importance of language, but also being able to translate not only into another language, but to other stakeholders and actors, and to make sure that we and the learnings that we have in this project we are able to translate it. And that's an exercise that we have to do as a research team. So thank you to the three of you, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. We are launching, well, no, we're not launching, we're already working on a second part of this project that we hopefully will be sharing with you. That is it's a second part on this tool about the alert system. We're trying to build a regional tool, not only now in Spanish and for Colombia, but in Spanish, but understanding the complexities of the Spanish language in other countries. And hopefully we'll be able to show you some results soon. This technological environment is changing rapidly. And I can tell you now that we're starting to analyze the conversation these conversations in a very different way, or starting to think about the analysis in a very different way from what we presented to you today, which is absolutely great. Like for me, it was striking to think, okay, we can start doing the analysis in a different way. So thank you very, very much to everyone. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Maria Paula. Thank you, Alejo. And thank you all the team, the Sinfonía team, de los Andes team, Las Aulas en Paz, and all the people who were here today with us. And we'll be sharing this information in a newsletter and some social media information, so you can have a little bit more information in detail. So thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.
Video.
Ciao.
Bye bye, everyone. Thank you.